introduction, I think we have already been introduced. So waterfall versus agile. So what happens here? In waterfall or traditional methods, the planning of the project is done for the entire project. Here we are understanding the differences between waterfall and the agile. So in waterfall or the traditional methodology, as I told you before, we do the planning for the complete project. When I say project, the project is not just for 2 or 3 months. A huge project is going to last for like 5 years to come. Imagine constructing a huge bridge over a river, right? So this bridge planning could be done for like 5 years, and the waterfall methodology defines the scope for that all 5 years right now. So how difficult it is going to be, you can just imagine. So, but the agile method is not like that. It's a progressive plan, right? So maybe we have a quarterly planning or a half yearly planning or 1 year plan for progressing the bridge. After this 1 year plan is complete, we take the feedback whether the project status is going as per our plan or is it getting deviated, are we faster, are we slower, all this feedback we get, and then we change the planning for the next section or sector accordingly. So that is the main key difference between the traditional and agile approaches. So also the traditional methods are not so change friendly. When we talk about a second difference, they are not so change friendly, right? So a tremendous energy and so many resources are involved in something if it is changed in a traditional project. So the change management process in waterfall is one of the most difficult things to handle. So if you propose any change in a traditional method of project management, straight away you are going to get a lot of back pressure from the stakeholders. They will straight away refuse you first and then listen to you. So it's not flexible at all. Whereas in the agile method, it always welcomes change, because agile method, this mindset itself thinks that the change has come for good. So when I say change, accepting the change is not possible here, because they think the traditional method is more careful, right? So being careful is for sure important thing, but in the current trend of emerging technologies, we have a faster changing world. If we stick to just a traditional method or the traditional methodology for implementing the changes, and if we are not flexible at all, it's going to be very difficult for us to compete in the race. So agile approach, it is attempting to break this style of working and welcoming the change. So another difference between the standard traditional and the agile methodology is adaptation. So the team feedback on the current plan of the project is not so welcome in the traditional methods. Usually the plan is done at the very beginning of the project, so all rules and guidelines, they are set, and there is no changing the rules once the plan is set. Even if the things are going to be difficult direction, even if the most of the stakeholders are having difficulty with some process, the waterfall method, it just doesn't allow for the predefined process to change. But agile, on the other hand, has special retrospective meetings. One of the process of the agile itself is a retrospective meeting, just to understand if the stakeholders have something to say about the current style of working. So what happens is, even if one of the team members gives a feedback that something is not going well, this proposal is very well discussed within that retrospective meeting within the team, and if agreed by everybody in the team, the scrum master takes a decision that we can change the process immediately starting from that very hour. So lastly, the feedback on the final result. So as we learned in the introduction, the waterfall method doesn't provide feedback of the project during the life cycle. So for us to understand if the project is actually succeeded, we have to wait until it performs the application, or in the field, or maybe even the final proving testing of the product. But agile agile is not like this. Every sprint meet is an increment to the project, and we can have a clear understanding of the status of the project. And I think we have discussed about this enough in the introduction class. Moving on, inversion of targets. I think this is something important, and I think this is also examination friendly. So please pay a little extra attention here. Waterfall methodology and agile methodology, right? So you please shift your focus towards these two triangles which are inverted between each other. So the triangle that we see on the top left, so this is the basis of how waterfall or the traditional methodology is designed. You can see what happens here is that traditionally the scope of the project is quite fixed. So we have to spend all the time and cost based on the decision of scope, right? So building that bridge in 5 years, that is the scope that is defined. So and then we have to keep adding our extra time to achieve that, scope target, and we have to even spend a lot of cost, right? So what happens here is the time can shoot out, the cost can shoot out, but the total amount of the work that needs to be done, that doesn't change, that is fixed. So this is the basis of the traditional waterfall method, and there is no, flexibility to change the scope. This is the reason why the changes are not acceptable quite well in the waterfall methodology. But on the contrary, if you shift your focus on the inverted triangle here, that is the agile approach, you can see that the time and cost are our primary fixed targets. So whatever is on the top is here considered to be the primary target, and then whatever is in the bottom is considered to be the targets that we do to support the primary target. So here the primary target is the time and primary target is the cost. So within the stipulated time, within the stipulated cost, we have to finish the project. So and then scope can slowly vary, right? If you are running out of the time, we have to increase the scope for that particular sprint. We have discussed what sprint is. So a sprint could be a 2 week run or 3 week run. So in this 2 weeks, if we are running out of time, we have to think about adding a little more work than we can, right? So that is the agile methodology. We will understand that, okay, we are running a bit slow. Now let us add a little more work, run that extra mile. Or it could be the other way around also. If we are having a little bit of time, or if we are running a bit faster, we can relax ourselves for that week. Sometimes even one of the sprint meetings even gets cancelled. We'll understand what these sprint meetings are, what these sprints are in just a bit. So with this approach, we have a better control over the total cost of the project. The deliverables are complete within the time, because the time and the targets and the outputs are like quite flexible, right? So all changes are basically welcome in the agile method. Moving on, agile values. Yeah, this is an important section, and one or two questions might definitely come here. What does this talk about? It's about what do you value more if you follow the agile methods, right? So you have two quite contrary options, not so contrary, but if you prefer one over the other, that tells you what your methodology or mindset is. So if you wish to follow the agile methodology, you have to value the left column over the right column. Let me explain you with these examples. So individuals and interactions over the process and tools, right? So that is a mindset. We value individuals and interactions more than process and tools if you want to follow the agile methodology or agile approach. So we know and understand the process and tools are very important for the project, but without people or the individuals, all these processes and tools are there basically useless. So the agile approach values the people or the individuals over the tools. So it values interactions over the processes. So I think you're clear about this. So let's quickly run over these examples. So working result over the comprehensive documentation. I said result because it could be product, process, or result. Right? So don't get confused. So we know and understand that the documents are important, but who actually reads a car driving manual? You might have driven a car, you might have purchased it, and basically somebody even doesn't know that there is a manual in the car. So documentation is not so quite often read. So the final product that we get to see, that is of more interest for the end customer. So the final product or the incremental progress is more important in the agile work than the paperwork. So the agile values the real result more than the documentation. And then customer collaboration is valued more than the negotiation of contract. So what happens here is the end user of the product must be in agreement with the maker or seller that that the deliverables that are decided at the beginning of the project, all the objectives, they're all met. So there is a DOD, that is definition of done. So what does it mean? When we say something is done, both the parties have to agree what it means by done, right? So for example, you have asked to paint a wall. So the painter might tell that it is done, right? But for a customer, it is done only when the paint is as per the requirements of the end user. So the agile approach focuses, a lot on the values all these values that we see, okay, I think we still have one more value to focus on. So what happens here is, as mentioned in the previous slides, agile approach values the change more than a fixed scope of the product or result, right? So we need to remember that the agreed deliverables, they are still met here, but even if there is a slight change in these deliverables, the agile approach welcomes this change, considering that every change is a positive change for the project.